Hi, and welcome to LNA Does Audio Stuff. And it has been a while since I've been back here with a new All About Ableton Live video. And we're gonna start this season of All About Ableton Live videos with a bang, because today you will learn every single bit that there is to learn about Sampler. Whew. And because Sampler has a lot to learn about, I have divided this video into two series. So there is episode 1, where we'll learn all about its main functions that get you started with Sampler. And then there's episode 2, which is next week, which is all about all the things that make it as powerful as it is. Also, I have given you a little gift for the occasion. So I have created a sample pack and a preset pack. Yeah, it's only literally a £5 and it really supports me a lot. So check that out from the link down below. Without further ado, let's get into this tutorial and learn everything there is to know about Sampler. There we go, that looks a bit better. What are we doing here? Sampler. Sampler. Okay, so we're gonna start by adding a sampler into a track. So we're gonna go into the browser window, and then on this instruments, we find a sampler. There we go. So let's just put an empty one there. This is slightly different and a bit more complex than Simpler, but it's awesome, because it has more functions, because it can do a lot, so much. And one of the main things about Sampler is that it has a multi-sample functionality. We're gonna go and start from the zone area. I know you would like to start from the sample area because it looks familiar, it looks comfortable, because it looks very similar than Simpler does. But we're gonna start from the zone. So if you click the zone, it opens up this new extended screen that has stuff on the right, it has stuff in the middle. If we start from here and we understand what zone is, you will then understand the full capacity. Oh yeah, I said it right. Capacity, instead of just using the sample area and limiting yourself into just those functions. We can actually add clips into this view, which then we can then manipulate in the sample area. And I'm gonna look for a sample.
From the top to the very last drop.
I want to use that one. So what I did is that I just dragged and dropped a sample into here. You can see the name here, and also you can see that there's something happening here on the right. You can also now see that in the sample area, we have the sound wave of this sample. Fabulous. So I could go and find another sample, maybe a chord. Yes. And now you can see that the sample that I just dragged and dropped is now in the sample area. We have sample layer list. So because we're doing a multi-sampler situation, we can have multiple samples working together as one. So now I could just solo, example, the bongo chili vocal. And when I press a key on my keyboard and press A,
From the top to the very last drop.
I can only hear that one. When I solo the jazz guitar chord, I can only hear that. But together,
From the top to the very last drop.
when nothing is soloed, I can hear them both same time. So there is now different zones and different techniques that we can select if we want to play them together, if we want to make them work together, or if we want to play them separately. And what we can help with that is these buttons options here on the top. We have 3 zones. So this is the zone editor on the right. And right now we can edit the key editor view here. This is the velocity zone editor. And then we have sample select zone editor. So the key one has octaves, so you can see on the top here. So we have C-2, C-1, C0, C1, 2, so on. So what we can actually do is that we can go to these that are called zones. So these are the zones. That's why it's zone editor, because these are the zones. So we can take these zones and drag them from left and right to extend them. So, okay, so the bongo chili vocal, we could have it as zone C-2 to C3, and the other one from C3 to C8. On the top of these zones are zone fades, like a lighter green line on the top of the dark green line. I can go there and I can create fades. And what they do is that we can, example, cross them together. So I could pull that a little bit there and I can create a fade from there to there. So now these zones are kind of like fading into each other. This is the zone fade mode. And linear is linear power. So it will work on a linear power fade where the POV is a constant power. You can see here that the vocal is getting higher in pitch, but it's also getting quieter. And then when I get into here, in the top octave, you can't hear it anymore. Same is we're gonna go to the lower octaves. Can't hear the piano keys at all because they are not selected. The velocity is not measured in octaves, it's measured from 1 to 127. So we can now take this zone editor and we can put what is the range of our velocity on that sample. Why, example, we want to use these controls, these zones and velocities, is because it allows us to create electronic instruments that actually has a multiple dimensions to them. So let's say, example, when you buy an electric piano, like if it's an actual like electric piano that's supposed to sound real, every single key someone has recorded a sound of someone playing an actual piano on that key. But that same key, example, let's say someone has recorded someone playing C on an acoustic piano. Someone might have also played it in different velocities. So we can also create that by creating different velocities by just adjusting the velocity control. So the example, we have a core library, and under core library, we have samples, and under there, we have multisamples. So everybody should really have this pack, and we can go example, a grand piano. And what I can do is I can select a bunch of them and drag and drop them to the list. And what you could see here is that it's automatically detected where they are located in the key, like this. Velocity is all the way 127. We have the same note, A sharp. We can see that there's these different markings here, P, M, F, 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 and F, which are all markings of basically the volume, the velocity of the strength of how fast someone has pressed them. So piano would be the smallest. So I could then go and just create. This is just very like randomly put them. I can just add velocity ranges to all of them, so they have some kind of maybe little fades between them, like that. Now if I have a controller, so example, I have a push here that I can press it with different velocities. I can also put this button on, which is called auto select, which will show which sample is being played currently. So if I hit it in a different strength, you can hear now that the velocity will change. Or you can see that the velocity is changing. Very smoothly. So we can just hot swap samples as well, which is really cool. So hot swapping just is if you go up and down with your keys and you press enter, it will just change the samples automatically. So there's context menu obviously as well. So example, if we have a right click or two finger click with Mac on the zone area, zone editor, we can get small, medium and large. So if we want to just edit them a little bit better. If you right click on the list, we get also a context menu that gives us a lot of options. So we have distribute ranges equally. So you can see that it changes the range that it's the key range. Distribute ranges around root key. And then we can again put small, medium, large here as well. Manage samples. So we can also manage the samples here in the file editor. Normalize volumes. Volume here. You can see it just changed the volume here. But also I can go and normalize pan, which you can see that it just changed the pan control in the sample. So it went 1L. Oh, we also have a reload loops from file, select all with sample range. So example, if I want to just check how many of the A sharps I have, I can select that. I have these different sorting systems. So we have sort alphabetically, either ascending or descending, key ascending, descending, velocity ascending or descending, and selector ascending or descending. So we have actually different ways to also sort all these samples in the zone. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Okay, then we have sample select zone. Sample select zone. But it goes this time from 0 to 127. And here it's really important, on the top bar, we have this blue thingy that moves around. And actually, if you're familiar with audio effect racks, this is literally the same type of thing as in those. Change selector zone. So in audio effect rack, you can do the same thing. We can map this selector into a controller or something, and we can actually go between different samples using this. So let's show this in action. I'm just going to remove the other sample. So example, I could just fade out, create this massive crossfade between these two. So now I will only be able to hear the bongo chili vocal.
From the top to the very last drop.
Okay, but then now if I'm going to move this to 40,
From the top to the very last drop.
I can hear a little bit of the chord. Then if we go in the middle, I will hear as much as chord as the vocal.
From the top to the very last.
If I go to 104, I will hear more of the chord than the vocal. And if I go to 127, I will only hear the chord. Okay, so let's have a look at the sample area. Area. I don't know what that was. I only have one sample in the sample list. So if you have multiple samples here, you can just select them from the zone list, or you can actually just go here on the drop-down menu and select it from here as well. And let's just start to look through these options on the bottom here. So we have a reverse option.
From the top to the very last drop.
Okay, and then reverse. Sounds almost Finnish. I miss Finland. But then we have also snap. We actually have these flags on these markers on the left, that's right, not left, and the left, where we can actually select an area, sample start and sample end. You can see here, sample start and sample end. So when I move these little flaggy situations there, you can see that these also move. So what snap means is that when by the way, if I can also zoom in by holding down command, and it zooms in very smoothly. Command or control in PC. So it will snap the start and the end of the sample into the zero crossing, which means that it's basically where the amplitude, so the volumes or the loudness, is completely zero. So we'll find the closest points for that. So let's just have a look how much it moves when I snap it. Oh, not much. Can you see it? And what that is good for is that it's reducing clicks and snaps and stuff when it's looping, because there's a lot of looping happening when we use a sampler. Okay, so then we have a root selector. Root selector is really good for the fact that, let's say you add a sample that it's recorded in A, you can just find where the root is. Fantastic. We have Detune, where we can detune the sample.
Very last, very last, very last, very last, very last, very last, very last.
It's just a little detune for it. And then we have scale. And scale is actually really cool. Now the scale is in 0, so you can see it will always play the same note even though wherever I press. So if I have it where it's default, which is 100%, and I go up in scale, it will go now C major scale up. D, 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 D. If I put it up to 200, look what happens. So it goes up in like much bigger steps. They're emptying our recycling. Sounds so loud. They're still out there, but let's continue. If I'm gonna go to then opposite direction, we can go minus as well. So if I go now up in scale, it will actually go downwards. We go minus 200. Very last. And then we have volume, which is the volume of the signal. We have pan, which is the pan of the sample. Be careful of using that you're not mixing these controls with the global controls of here. So these are the global controls for all the samples in the list, where these are just for this sample. Okay, so then we have sample start, sample end. You already know what they are because we already worked on that. Then we have sustain mode and release mode. So these are one of my favorite things in sampler. You can just see by the arrow what they basically do. So we have a sustain mode and we have that on. It will play from the start to end. It will start from this flag and it will stop on this one. So if I go to the next one, which will add this loop bar praise here. The first flag that we already had there will determine where it will start. And then when it arrives to this area here, it will start looping inside of this area. So let's have a look.
Stop to the very last, very last, very last, very last.
Step to the very last, very last, very last, very last. Okay, then we have this one, which will be the same thing, but the movement inside of the praise will be different. So instead of go very last, it goes very last, very last, very. I will just show you.
Stop to the very last, very last, very last, very last, very last, very last.
We can also link them,
Very last, very last, very last.
which will link the sample start as well as the sustain mode. We are working with the sustain of the sample as well as the release of the sample, and they are very connected to the global envelope of the volume envelope here. So sustain is this area here, which when I press it down, it's the sustain of how long is it going to be pressed, but also then release is how long is it going to be playing after I release my finger, and it will just keep on playing. This release mode, you kind of need to have a little bit longer release on the global envelope. And so we have the same thing as here. So it will start and then it will just go 1 to end.
Stop to the very last, very last.
So you can just hear, okay, I'm going to put it a little bit longer.
Stop to the very last, very last.
So it's first doing the sustain because I'm holding it down. Now I'm going to release. So it just went from very last 1 time. Okay, so then we have this next one, which also gives us a praise loop. So let's just put this one, and this is the release praise loop. And I'm going to just put it on this bar here. So what? Don't get confused. So we have now, it will start from here. Then when I'm sustaining it, it will loop around here. using these modes. And now we have another mode here that it will loop inside of this one when I release it. Depending how long the global release is, it depends how long it will hang around here. Okay, let's have a look how I'm pressing, sustaining, releasing. How freaking cool is that? So it almost sounds like a delay. And the same thing, if I put it like that, it will go bop, 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 ping pong both ways. Like that. I kind of like it on that one more. So then we have loop start, which is the loop, which is this loop, and loop end, which is this end here. So we can control them from these ones as well. And then we have the release loop, which is the start here, but we don't have the end because the end is actual this control here, which is the end of the whole sample. We also have crossfades. So if I add a fade, you can see that there's now a fade that comes between the start and the actual sustain mode loop. So we can add a fade between those areas, and we can have also a fade between the sustain mode and the release mode. So let's see how that sounds. Like that. We can also detune these loops. And then we have Interpol. So it's how the accuracy of the transposed sample, if you put it to good or best, it will actually increase your CPU usage a lot. CPU means that your computer will struggle a lot more because it has a lot more to process with. So we have now a very high detune on the second loop, and I put it as best. And then we have RAM, so that means that the sample will be put on RAM. So it will load it to the RAM. Increase the performance of this whole session, but the problem is that it will take away from the RAM, the power from RAM, which means that it might also affect on other things that are happening. This one, it will zoom in into the signal. So example, if I zoom in somewhere here and I want to see a bit better what happens in the signal, but it doesn't increase the volume. We have both. We see both channel. We have left and right channel. We see mono signal is M, only left channel and only right channel. So in the next week's episode, we will continue looking at the pitch, oscillators, filter, global, modulation, MIDI, and MPE. Fun. Couple more things to go through in Sampler, but the fact that you can start already with zones and samples is already a lot. It's so cool. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe because this is cool channel. There's a lot of cool stuff in here and you will enjoy it if you enjoyed this video. Also, please hit the bell icon and please share it to all your loved ones because they do want to know about Sampler as well, especially your mom. I bet your mom would love to know about Sampler. Also, thank you for all my Patreon family. These are the fantastic... Wait, I'm gonna put it on this side. These are the fantastic people of my Patreon family. I chat with them in a weekly live streams. I give them feedback. They can message me directly. We have masterclasses. We have so much cool things happening. So thank you, every single one of them. And if you want to be part of the family, Patreon link is down below. Hey, so see you next week for episode number 2 of Sampler. Numero 2. See you later. Bye, 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 bye.